The canopy above Sector 7 was a living cathedral of bioluminescent vines and phosphorescent moss, casting the jungle floor in perpetual twilight. Nara had been warned about the density of Kepler 442b's equatorial forests, but warnings and experience were different creatures entirely. She checked her nav band for the fourth time in as many minutes. Still nothing. The quantum positioning system that had worked flawlessly for 6 months on this alien world had finally surrendered to the jungle's electromagnetic chaos. The expedition base was somewhere beyond the wall of massive trunk columns that surrounded her, each one wider than her ship and stretching up into the green-gold haze above. "Great," she muttered, tapping the useless device. "Humanity crosses 40 light-years of space, and I get lost like a tourist without a map." The irony wasn't lost on her. Back on Earth, she'd navigated the Australian outback, the Amazon basin, the Siberian taiga. But those were home. This was Kepler 442b, where the trees had nervous systems. The air hummed with spores that sang in ultrasonic frequencies, and the local fauna defied every rule of evolutionary biology she'd ever learned. Nara took a breath, forcing herself into the calm she'd cultivated over 2 decades of exploration. Panic was a luxury she couldn't afford. She had water for 3 days, rations for 5, and enough knowledge to stretch both if needed. Humans were good at that. Surviving against the odds, making do, adapting. She started walking, following the slight decline in terrain. Water flows down. Life gathers near water. It was a universal truth, even 40 light-years from home. That's when she heard it. A cry, high-pitched, keening, unmistakably young. It echoed through the jungle, bouncing off the massive trunks and filtering through the dense undergrowth. Nara froze, her hand instinctively moving to the plasma knife at her belt. The cry came again. Not one voice this time, but several, harmonizing in distress. Against every survival instinct screaming at her to stay hidden, to stay quiet, Nara moved toward the sound. It was the kind of stupid, compassionate decision that had gotten humanity both into trouble and out of it throughout history. She found them in a clearing where a massive tree had fallen, crushing the undergrowth and creating a rare window of direct sunlight. 5 cubs, she couldn't think of another word for them, huddled together near what appeared to be a collapsed burrow entrance. They were covered in silvery fur that rippled with color, like oil on water, and their eyes were too large, too intelligent, too afraid. One of them, slightly larger than the others, spotted her first. Instead of fleeing, it stepped forward, its color shifting to what Nara's linguistic training recognized as a pattern. Communication. "Vec," it said. Or rather, the translator in her ear said "Vec" after processing the series of chromatic pulses and subsonic rumbles. "I'm Nara," she replied, knowing her words would be translated into whatever sensory language these creatures used. Vec's colors pulsed urgently, and through the translator, Nara understood: trapped parent below, help, trust. The other cubs took up the call, their colors synchronizing in a desperate chorus. It was then that Nara realized they hadn't just stumbled upon her. They had been calling, systematically, persistently, and somehow, despite her lost position and failing equipment, she had found them, or they had found her. Nara knelt by the collapsed burrow, assessing. The fall had been recent, fresh earth still settling dust in the air. Whatever had caused it, the mother was trapped below with at least one more cub. She could hear faint sounds through the debris. "All right," she said, more to herself than to Vec. "Let's see what humanity can do." She had no excavation equipment, no comlink to call for help, no guarantee that digging wouldn't cause a further collapse. But she had hands, a brain that had evolved to solve problems, and that peculiar human stubbornness that refused to accept impossible. Nara began to dig. Her fingers found the larger stones first, rolling them away. Then she scooped the loose earth, careful not to destabilize the surrounding structure. Vec watched for a moment, then mimicked her movements. The other cubs joined in, their small paws surprisingly effective at moving the smaller debris. Time became meaningless. Nara's shoulders screamed. Her fingernails broke. Sweat soaked through her expedition suit, but she kept digging and so did they. When her fingers finally broke through into the cavity below, a blast of warm air hit her face. She widened the hole carefully, then peered down. 2 pairs of large, luminous eyes stared back at her. The mother was massive, easily 3 times Nara's size, cradling a tiny cub against her chest. For a moment, they simply looked at each other across the gulf of biology and evolution. Then Nara reached down. The mother hesitated. Nara could see the calculation happening behind those alien eyes. Trust was universal, and so was the risk of extending it. Slowly, the mother handed up the cub. Nara took it gently, passing it to Vec, who chirped in relief, colors flashing joy. Then came the harder part, helping the mother climb out. It took Nara's shouted instructions, all her strength, and a courage from the trapped creature that transcended species. When the mother finally pulled herself free, she stood to her full height, towering over Nara. The human stepped back, suddenly aware of how vulnerable she was, how alone, how lost. The mother's colors shifted, deep blues and warm golds. The translator rendered it as gratitude, respect, kinship. Then Vec approached, his colors pulsing in a new pattern. Through the translator, follow, home, safe. As the family began to move through the jungle, Nara realized they knew exactly where they were going, and where she needed to go. The cubs had cried out until she answered, and now they would guide her home. Nara smiled, falling into step behind them. Humanity had crossed the stars carrying many things: technology, science, culture. But perhaps the most important thing they'd brought was simple: the instinct to answer when someone calls for help, even when they were lost themselves, especially then.